All right, so we got some questions from the community. The first one is from Mika, and Mika, by the way, made a bot for our Discord channel so
That's
that
so cool.
every time we're on Twitch doing a dev stream, people on Discord know. So
I love it. It's
yeah,
awesome.
it's awesome.
Thanks
So
for
thank you
making
so
that.
much, Mika.
That's cool.
Okay, so Mika's question. Will we be able to add conditions to a spell like distance to target or direction towards target and such, so that spells react differently to different conditions? For example, follow a target or cast a spell at a target when the target's within a certain range.
I want to say the answer is yes. I will say, like, there's some interesting, cool, complex things there that I'm not sure I'm definitely understanding correctly, but I want to say that it must be true that you can make a spell react differently to different conditions because, you know, the fundamental truth of code spells is spells are all code, so underneath the hood it's just code, so of course you can have written in the implementation of your spell some kind of if statement that takes into account either parameters you pass in when you construct the spell with runes, or parameters that are just inherent in the world when the spell is running. So you get the best benefits of both, like kind of compile time or write time control over the parameters of your spell, and runtime control of the parameters of your spell, just like any program that you would write. So think of a spell as a function that you're writing. So functions can have parameters, and those parameters can control what the function does, but also certain functions read the state of the world, and so you might run them on Tuesday and they do something different than they do on Wednesday. That's, you know, if they're not a pure function. And there's nothing that requires a spell to be a pure function, so it could be that you cast it and it does nothing because there's no enemies around, but if you cast it when there's an enemy around, it definitely does something. Or you could add a parameter that says do something even if there's not an enemy around. You can override the behavior. So yeah, of course you would get any amount of control that you want to exert given the kind of coding ability that you have.
Yeah, and it just reminded me of the trigger rune. Like, that's kind of a rune that has a condition, like you have to be within the trigger for the spell to happen.
Yeah.
So I think spells that have conditions or something that, especially when we're starting to build more like mini games and stuff, we'll need to start making more runes that have like conditions.
No, that's a good point, because the spells are functions metaphor works, but it's also good to remember those functions don't have to just run and finish. They can keep running, and so the trigger runes that we're experimenting with, we cast them, they're in a spot, and they're always running, and they're checking to see if anyone comes into that zone, and if so, it runs another spell. So you can actually have spells that call other spells, but at a certain time, and only if certain conditions are met. You can chain these spells as deeply as you want. And so we've already been prototyping that stuff, so I can say with confidence that's the kind of thing that's the level of control you would get if you want that level of control.
So I have another one from Mika. Additionally, will there be a rune to destroy the orb that activates the currently in use spell after a certain condition is met? Like after it has traveled a certain distance, just to have more control over that spell's range or duration.
Okay, yeah, so I think if I'm understanding right, this is kind of similar to what we were just chatting about. So if you have you cast a spell, it's in motion, you could have passed in certain parameters when you wrote that spell, which is like destroyed after 10 seconds or whatnot. Or you can get the other one where it's in the world doing something, and then you cast another spell with some other rune that would find it, clean it up, tell it to stop.
Right.
So either one of those could be, those are sort of two perfectly viable strategies you could use to control a running spell.
Yeah. I got one from Wild Dog. Will there be VR?
Oh, I love VR, by the way. So
Big fans.
Yeah, like, so I still, like, it was 5 or 6 years ago, and I still remember the moment I put on an HTC Vive, and I was like, man, this is, like, really
game changer.
real. Yeah, I know, it's awesome. And then we actually did, not a lot of people know this, but we published a very unsuccessful VR title called Voxel, VOX-L. So it's a voxel building game in VR. Yep. Still on Steam. I have no idea if it works or if anyone has played it, honestly. So we do have some experience with VR coding, and so it is definitely my dream that one day Code Spells works in VR, because, like, how cool would that be? But I have to say, like, it's out there on the roadmap. It's not like the next thing we're doing.
Yeah.
We just now got multiplayer to the point where it kind of works for two of us. We still got to make sure it works for the third person and fourth person. Scaling that stuff up just for desktop play. We're also still on Windows. It likes to be on Mac and Linux. So there's a lot of roadmap out there, and unfortunately we just don't have the manpower, person power to be doing VR too soon. But who knows?
At some point.
Yeah, I mean it's our dream to work on this project forever. So if we get that accomplished, that we're able to work on Code Spells forever, then I could say VR will happen.
At some point we'll have VR. All right, I got one from Blood Troller. Could there be different classes? Like, I always thought that wizards are the ones with sticks and mages are the ones that just use their body, like their hands, to cast spells. I'm imagining is what they're saying.
That's how interesting. Is that? Huh.
I've never thought about the distinction between mages and wizards, but
wizards have staves and mages are just like, that's kind of cool. I like that. I don't know. Maybe that is the distinction. I've never thought about it. Maybe I haven't been paying attention, but that is pretty cool. But so actually, this gets into an interesting kind of general topic that I've been thinking about, and I know we've been thinking about a lot, is the most interesting magic systems, whether it's in a book or a game or a movie or whatever, or just in your own mind. The most interesting magic systems are interesting not just because of the powers you have, but also very much because of the restrictions on those powers.
Yeah.
And, it's like taking Harry Potter as an example, right? It's the fact that not everyone can do magic that makes Harry Potter, the whole plot of Harry Potter, work. Like, you got to go to a school to learn this stuff because, it's fundamentally restricted by what words you know and how powerful you are and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Since Code Spells is a game about designing worlds and then implementing your own magic systems and then coding spells within those magic systems, I definitely want you to be able to restrict the magic systems that you're building and designing as well as just give them powers and abilities.
Yeah.
Sure, I think so. Yeah, I mean, would we build that in one of our authored works? A stick versus no stick wizard distinction? I don't know. I hadn't thought about it before.
Yeah.
It's cool though. I like it. It's a neat idea.
We'll keep thinking about it. Got another one from Mika. As there are going to be creatures in the game, I will assume there will be runes that handle damage as well.
Yes.
If this would be the case, then will there be a system in place where the more you use certain runes, the higher the damage would be, or stronger effects on other runes following the same principle? That's interesting.
So, it gets more damaging over time?
Or maybe, I guess I was reading it as... Yeah, maybe you're getting more skilled at those runes.
Yeah. Oh, like an experience kind of system
maybe,
or something.
Yeah,
that totally
something
makes
like
sense.
that.
Yeah.
Kind of makes sense.
I like how these questions. I feel like they kind of go together. I don't know if Blood Trawler and Mika know each other, but I feel like both of these are about sort of the other aspects to the system that aren't just about what you can do. It's also about how does that ability change over time. So could there be a system where you get better at a spell as you cast it, or you
powerful,
or you're required to cast it a lot before it gets up to a level of power that's interesting or acceptable, which I think is awesome, and I think that's definitely really cool. So the answer is yes, that should be a thing that you can do, because in any given magic system you're creating with whatever given runes, you can certainly store, again, runes. Spells are just functions, so you can have a function that runs, and then it stores some metadata that says the player has run this function one time, so it has this level of effect. And you can store character data separately that that then gets read when the function executes to decide if it works, how well it works,
how strong it is.
How strong it is, exactly what color it is, whatever. You look at a lot of things. Your spell can take into account a lot of things, including very much what the...
But it seems like a really fun...
I love it, yeah, it's really cool.
Mechanic.
Yeah, because, again, the idea of, as a player of a game... I think you don't want to be able to cast every possible spell right away. There's something about learning it, either learning how to do it or just having to grind a little bit to unlock that ability. That's what games are all about. We don't want to always skip to the last level. So yeah, that kind of thing where you're able to restrict the spells as part of the magic system, that's
Yeah.
definitely something we're interested in.
Yeah, and like the plan is to have lots of different kinds of games in the Code Spells ecosystem.
yeah,
So,
yeah.
we'll probably have sandbox games where you can do whatever you want without any limitations or restrictions. But I think games where, we have these mechanics that make them fun,
Right. Yeah, exactly.
is really important.
Yeah, and so our general roadmap strategy right now is to put out tech demos where they're not restricted. They just try stuff because we want people to be able to at least see where we're heading as quickly as possible. Because we know it's easy to restrict something unrestricted after the fact. So we're making these unrestricted magic systems. So we're not a lot of thought to making them complex and interesting, and just making sure they can do certain things. And then and we're hoping that we can add interesting, subtle distinctions into those systems, and that so can other people. And just as a community, we can explore this design space of magic systems, which I've just been fascinated with since I was a kid, and I know people in the community are too. 'Cause,
for sure.
I think that's what draws people in. Is they're like, oh, Code Spells, finally a magic systems that we can all talk about and design together. I think that's the big,
it's very exciting.
the kind of cornerstone of what Code Spells is all about.
So while we were talking, literally somebody just asked another question in Discord. Thank you, Broadster102808. Broadster102808 is asking, so is multiplayer out? ?
I assume you mean by multiplayer is out in terms of it's released, and the answer is it's being pushed out right now. It's
We're literally
we're giving
doing
birth
it
to
right
it
now.
at this moment. It's like we're in labor right now.
Before we started this Q&A session, we were working on getting Voxel multiplayer out. And next, once we're done with this, we're going to start another Twitch session where we're going to be working on Village. So,
All right, here's a quick version of the story over the last few weeks. So there was a phase where I was like, all right, we've got to get multiplayer working, and did a bunch of tech stuff and tried several things, didn't work, tried several other things that didn't work, found something that did work. And so we do have a pretty good multiplayer system right now where client and server both work. Either one can write and cast spells, and whatever you do in one, it synchronizes across to the other one. Exactly what you'd expect, but multiplayer game programming is not easy, so it was tricky to get it working.
Yeah.
Anyway, long story short, it is working, but as anyone knows who's been following the project, we have 7 worlds out there now, and we want to have many more, so we're in the process of taking that core technology and pushing it out to each of those worlds. And then we also just have a ton of cleanup work that we're doing. We have, we just released a blog post the other day. It was just a surprise to us too. We have 36 Code Spells repositories right now. There's a lot of stuff so we're trying to keep organized.
Yeah.
So we have some organizational stuff to do. But I hate to put a deadline on it because I want it to be done today, but we're not done today. So maybe Friday next week we'll be done. And by done, I mean all the tech demos out on the download page will have multiplayer capability within them. And then we'll try to release some documentation for how you get a multiplayer session to work.
Right.
Which is another thing. It might not be easy, but I want it to be a good working first draft. You might have to run one of those downloads with a special command line flag or something like that in order to set up one as the server and then run a different one with a different command line flag to set it up as the client and connect them together. But yes, we're getting to technology works. But we're getting to the point where it's released and usable by the community.
Yep. It'll be there soon.
Yeah, that's literally what we're working on. That's our full-time job is giving birth to the first version of multiplayer, so we can get it out there and start making it better.
So these Q&As get released to our patrons first. So we'll release this Q&A to our patrons in just a moment, and then a week later it'll be released on YouTube. So maybe by the time people are watching this on YouTube,
that's true. It might be out.
multiplayer might already be out. So check the Code Spells website.
Look at our blog.
There's a builds page you can check out.
Yeah, and then of course we're going to release a blog post when it happens. So skim the recent blog post and we say multiplayer works.
Yeah.
That's probably where it's going to tell you how to get multiplayer working with one of our builds and stuff like that.
Cool. Well, thank you everybody for your questions. Please submit more questions to us through the Discord. If you haven't joined the Code Spells Discord, There is a link on our website. You can join it. It's a fun place to ask us questions, talk about
Yeah.
magic systems,
Bubble up ideas.
Yeah.
We read that stuff. Like, we're definitely receptive to cool ideas. We want Code Spells to be a community project. So
Yeah.
yeah. So join the community.
Join the community.